You lie down on a simple bed of woven palm fibres, the night air cooling as the Nile drifts softly nearby. A clay lamp flickers in the doorway, its flame bending with the faintest breeze. Shadows stretch across the mud brick walls, moving as if they're alive. This was sleep in ancient Egypt, an act filled with family closeness, small guardians, and quiet rituals. What did it really feel like to end your day here, thousands of years ago, with loved ones resting at your side? Tonight we'll step into that moment, beginning with the last light of the sun. Before we settle in, if you enjoy these gentle journeys into the past, you're always welcome to like the video and subscribe for more quiet history evenings. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, or what helps you feel cozy at night. The last light of the sun spills over sun-baked brick, stretching long shadows through narrow courtyards. The sky glows in fading tones of red and orange, softer now than the harsh glare of noon. The warmth on your skin loosens, and the air begins to cool. Workers return through the street, their voices quieter than in the bustle of morning or the heat of midday. Sandals scuff the ground. Baskets of grain shift gently against wooden yokes. For a moment, the light settles unevenly across the walls before slipping away, as if the day itself exhales its final breath. Sounds across the town change with the sinking sun. The busy calls of trade are gone, replaced by murmured conversations drifting across doorways. Mothers call children inside. You hear straw rustling as it's laid near animals, doors being pressed closed with the steady push of hands. Even the marketplace, crowded only hours ago, lies still except for one last figure stepping home. The rhythm of life turns inward, drawn by the retreat of the sun. The air tilts into coolness. You breathe in the damp smell of river mud, carried further now on light winds. Over the rooftops, silence deepens. Birds fall quiet in their nests. The space around you seems to gather its own stillness, the day giving way to something slower. Night carries calm, but also unease. Eyes settle on the corners where shadows grow long. People stay alert against what may wander hidden, whether it's a thief slipping through alleys, a stray dog nosing for scraps, or the thought of spirits moving unseen. These worries do not fill every night with danger, but they gently press on the mind. As the last glow fades, to meet the dark, light is prepared. Small oil lamps are lit indoors, their clay bowls filled carefully with oil, a wick steadied in the mouth. Reed torches crackle in courtyards, bound stalks burning bright before sinks and walls. The flames are modest but sure, pushing back the edge of night. Their glow paints the mud brick walls gold for a moment longer, and keeps shadows from pressing too heavily into the room. It is in these little flames that households find safety, their steadiness, a reminder that the night can be softened. The Nile takes on another form here. In daylight, it is a work of earth and water, carrying boats and feeding fields. But as the sun dips completely, the river turns mirror. Stars collect on its surface, trembling with movement, and the sound of water pulling against its banks is steady and calm. That sound carries beyond the shore, through the town, threading into the stillness of evening. For many, it is the quiet pulse of life that holds steady when sight fails, like breath pulled evenly in rest. Preparations quicken before the dark closes fully. Floors are swept with bundled reeds, clearing dust to make room for lamps along the walls. Jars of water are carried so low fires can be stirred, embers drawn back to their glow. Tools are stacked against the walls. Nothing is left easily taken. The work is not frantic, it feels practiced, the rhythm of evening repeating, each action tightening the circle of safety inside. As the household settles, the contrast sharpens. Indoors is a small pool of warmth and flame, while outside lies the wide spread of the unknown. At the close of the doorway, one division holds both sides. The sight of shadows beyond still stirs unease, but there is comfort in the line that separates families from what waits outside. Through the cycle of the year, this moment has its rhythm. Winter pushes the sun down early. Oil is used longer, held as carefully as grain. Families gather to their lamps before they have finished eating. In summer, the sun lingers, stretching the evening, but even then, the pull of darkness comes, unmistakable and steady. Within it, fire is more than fuel. It is a centre where everything turns close. Flames gather the family's eyes, draw their voices soft. The lamp flame is fed gently with oil, each small act of care preserving a fragile but powerful thing. Without it, the night feels vast. With it, unease bends back toward calm. From the courtyard wall, you sense the day is gone. The winds crossing the town are cooler now, brushing across your skin. Above, the red sky retreats into a deepened blue. One distant torch flickers down a lane, its light already faint. What settles over the town is more than silence. Soft sounds gather slowly instead. Frogs coarsely mark the riverbank. Crickets sing steady notes, and animals shift into rest within their shelters. The workday's clatter is gone. What remains are these thin notes that fill the night until the sky lightens again. Here the household takes its final shape. Lamps cast steady light along walls that during daylight were bare and pale. Now they hold the room close, every flickering line making the inside feel stronger. Families sit low, finish their meal, or put away small chores in their glow. What was once an open threshold now closes tight, leaving the house as its own small world. You sense night not just as absence of light, but as a complete space of belonging. Families lean closer. Voices lower further still. The small circle of flame against the dark feels protective enough. Beyond the walls lies silence, but here gathers the texture of daily life, sheltered until dawn. From this stillness, we pass inward, where the walls themselves begin to shape the night. Inside the mud brick home, the air shifts in an instant. The street's heat no longer presses against your skin. Instead, the thick walls hold a cooler stillness that makes your breath slow. A clay lamp glows against the uneven surface, its small flame trembling as it stains the wall with moving shadows. You stand quietly as the outside world falls away, replaced by this single room, narrow, modest, yet filled with the weight of lives lived close together. The floor is packed earth, smoothed by countless steps over years. Its smell of dust clings no matter how often someone sweeps. At the far side of the wall, rounded clay jars wait in dimness, heavy with water drawn earlier from the river. Woven baskets sit beside them, filled with grain or kindling, while a folded mat leans against the wall, ready for the night. Everyday things cluster together neatly here, simple shapes arranged with care because the space leaves no room for waste. What you do not see are grand pieces of furniture. Wood in Egypt was scarce, and so few households could spare it for tables or cupboards. Instead, you find stools that barely rise to your knees, with legs carved plain and seats woven from leather or rush fibres. Their frames wobble slightly against the uneven earthen ground, a reminder that they were meant for work and rest, not display. The jars, mats, baskets, and stools make up nearly everything at hand, every surface worn smooth by repeated use. In one corner, reed mats are rolled tight and laid aside. Soon they will be spread across the same ground that during the daylight held tools and meals. Each evening, the room is asked to become something new. By day, it is a place for work, for food, for gathering. By night, it transforms into a space for sleep. Privacy does not belong here. Each part of life takes place in view of all the others. The house itself is a shared vessel, holding both the noise of day and the quiet of night in one narrow enclosure. Your eye lingers on the walls. They are pressed mud, dried under the sun, and layered thick to withstand weather and heat. At noon they served as barriers, keeping out the blazing glare. Now in the darkness they release their warmth in softer measure. A faint draught slips through a square cut high in the wall. It is not glass, not open in the way you may imagine, but covered with a mat of reeds. Through this, air filters in while dust and much of the street stay out. The breeze is light, but inside this house, it makes a world of difference. The rooms themselves stay small, their ceilings low and held by bundles of palm stems plastered with more mud. In the close air, scents gather, a trace of smoke from the fire earlier in the day, the sharpness of lamp oil, the earthy smell of the floor. Every action leaves a mark. Sound too is reshaped. A child's quick laugh softens against the clay. A bark from outside fades before it reaches you, but in return, every cough and whisper within the room carries clearly to every ear. Living here means constant closeness. What presses at times can also bind a family together in its own rhythm. Life and work blend without division. Against one wall sits a small brazier, its sides blackened by years of fire. Bread could be warmed here, beans simmered, or fish roasted. The ceiling above bears its faint stain of smoke. Near it rests the grinding stone, where grain is pressed into flour with the weight of hand and tool. In this space, work remains visible even after the tasks are done. Tonight, you sit beside the very places where meals were made or where clothes were mended, and tomorrow those same places will resume their tasks again, unchanged. Not only people share this room. For many households, animals lived close, often tied in a corner or sheltered near the threshold. A goat shifting its weight or a hen preparing to sleep are not unusual here. Their breaths join the rhythm of the family's own, their warmth adding to the air. That proximity leaves its mess but also its comfort. The animal whose milk or eggs serve the table tomorrow lies beside you tonight. It is another presence, another life folded into the whole of the house. As night deepens, the room fills with subtle sounds, water dipping softly from a jar, the scrape of a stool moved by hand, a child shifting in a bundle of cloth. In such closeness, the breath of others is always near. Their sleep, their murmurs, their turns become part of your own. Some nights it may feel pressing, yet it also builds the sense of safety that comes from knowing you are never alone. The mud brick walls serve not only as a shield against sun and dust, but as the very shape of life itself. They define limits, and within limits families learn to breathe and belong. Objects here are worn but valued, their simplicity matched by constant use. The jars, mats and stools may look plain, but they form the quiet rhythm of survival. Everyone within shares the same narrow routines, the same comfort of warmth gathered together in a single space. What could seem scarce instead takes on meaning through repetition, through closeness, through the sense of life carried together. In the hush of the lamplight, you begin to notice the pieces meant especially for rest. The mats rolled in the corner, the headrest set aside, the simple arrangements waiting for tired bodies. Soon they will be spread across the ground, claiming the same room in a new way. It is in these small preparations, in the objects set aside for the night, that the house bends to its next purpose. From the place where animals once stirred, to the tools that shaped bread, everything now gives way to the promise of sleep. Your gaze rests on the spot chosen for lying down. It is quiet, unadorned, yet ready to hold you. What you touch first here will decide the comfort of your night. And so, attention turns to where the body will finally settle, the surface that answers your weight and carries you toward dreams. The place where you rest is simple, yet it tells a story. In most homes, it is nothing more than a mat woven from palm fibre or rushes laid flat on the packed earth. The strands are coarse to the touch, slightly uneven beneath your skin, but strong enough to hold night after night of use. At times, a thin scatter of straw is laid beneath to soften the hard floor. This was the ordinary bed of farmers, craftsmen and labourers, practical, sturdy, never wasted. To lie here is to lie close to the earth, with almost nothing between your body and the ground. Some households had more than this. Instead of sleeping on the floor itself, the mat could be placed on a wooden frame stretched with rope, or strips of fibre. The frame raised the sleeper above dirt and dust, leaving a little space below for air to move. It was not softness that made it different, but distance from pests, from uneven clay, from the earth's cool that seeped upward at night. Even this small lift marked a step toward comfort that most people never knew. There were families, of course, whose beds held more still. Linen sheets gave the rough mat a smooth surface. Linen was costly, its pale surface both soft against the skin and cool against the heat that lingered after the day. To feel it was to no privilege. A single layer of woven cloth could transform sleep, turning what was coarse into something gentle. You can imagine tired hands brushing against its surface with gratitude, aware of what it meant to own such a thing. Above these stood the beds of the wealthy. Wood was scarce, so any large piece of furniture already carried meaning. For them, beds were raised higher, more solid, carved into shapes that gave even their legs the likeness of strength. Simple paws, steady curves, details that marked status as easily as they held weight. Such beds were more than places to sleep. They showed the world who you were, even in darkness. Within the royal courts, the difference grew sharper still. 4 post frames draped with linen canopies, closed off from dust and flies, creating a quiet space apart. To enter such a bed was to remove yourself from everything beyond its curtains, a rest both physical and symbolic. But across Egypt, most people did not know these forms. The wide range of beds reflected the wide range of society itself. Yet the majority lay each night on mats woven from reeds or palm, set side by side on the floor. Families shared space, arranging mats close until the room itself became one broad bed. Children, parents, even animals at times, all settled within arm's reach. A wealthy person might carry their head on linen, while a farmer rested on palm fibre. Both closed their eyes with the same hope of sleep. At the heart of each bed was one small but important object, the headrest. You lift it in your mind's eye, a curved piece of wood or clay resting on short supports. Its function was practical. It raised the head so air could pass along the neck, easing rest in a hot climate. Against the skin, It feels hard compared to the softness of cloth or feathers we might expect today. Yet placed beneath the neck, its curve fits better than it looks. This was enough for Egyptians to trust in, night after night. And beyond function, the headrest carried meaning. It appeared again and again in tombs, where it was meant to safeguard the sleeper not for one night, but for eternity. Keeping the head raised and intact was seen as essential, as if the small shape could guide its owner into the afterlife. With this in mind, lying down became more than an act of rest. Whether on mats of reed rope bed frames or linen sheets laid smooth, the position of the body at night echoed through daily life and beyond it. The first breath into the mat's coarse fibres carried the fatigue of the day, the release of muscles strained by work under the sun. The whisper of linen under a wealthier hand gave the same release, softened into comfort. In both, the body surrendered to the fact that the bed, however humble, must hold. The ritual of lowering oneself into stillness was the same across the city, shared by both the powerful and the ordinary. Imagine the contrast. In a sprawling palace chamber, a king sets himself onto a bed lifted high above the ground, legs carved with quiet strength, sheets laid smooth in folds of linen. In a modest home, a fisherman finishes his meal and unrolls a mat beside his children, settling onto fibres worn through years of use. Two vastly different scenes, yet both lives turn toward rest in much the same way. Bodies shift, shoulders settle, eyes close. The surfaces may change, but the act remains shared. The details of comfort could vary, sometimes made sharper by what was lacking. A reed might press against your side until you shifted. A crack in the hardened floor might remind you of the ground beneath. Even the softest linen could not remove every strain or ache. It is in these small truths that Egyptian sleep feels most familiar. Comfort was not perfect, but the body learned to rest within it anyway. That is why each addition, from straw beneath the mat to rope, stretched tight to sheets of linen, was valued so deeply. Every improvement stood not only for wealth, but for the promise of a gentler night. Beds, then, were both ordinary and profound. They marked your station in the world, but also met the same need across it. Each night, the mat of reeds or the raised frame became the boundary between day's labour and the silence of the dark. To lie down was to release, whether onto packed earth or fine linen. The mat that touched your skin was not only a surface woven by hand, it was the thin line between exhaustion and renewal. The wooden frame that kept you above the dust was more than wood. It was a sign of safety, of space. And the canopy, heavy with decoration, stripped to its simplest truth once eyes closed. It was where a body lay still, waiting for morning. You can feel that sameness most clearly in your own breath, the rough reeds against your side, or the smooth linen along your shoulder. Both meet the weight the body gives them. Both carry you into sleep. The differences remain, marking wealth, marking class, but the act itself is shared. Hands rough from fields or hands pale from court press against the same need for release. Beds tell stories of who people were, but sleep itself belongs equally. As your body settles and your skin adjusts to its surface, softness or roughness fades into the background. What remains is the stillness, the slowing of breath, the night gathering around you. But comfort alone was never enough. Egyptians like us wanted security when they closed their eyes. They lay not only on mats or wood, but beside things kept close, small forms set near the head, meant to guard what the body could not. In the quiet of the room, It is toward these objects that your thoughts begin to drift. Your hand moves to the small objects kept close at night, each one chosen for its protective power. These amulets are not luxury items alone. Most cost little, made from clay or faience, and nearly every family in Egypt could keep at least one nearby. They carried the trust of ordinary people as much as kings and priests. For them, sleep was never taken without some form of guard, for night was wide and uncertain. Egyptian nights were not thought of as empty. Darkness softened the edges of the world in ways that left people uneasy. Many feared that illness was more likely to stir after sunset, or that restless spirits wandered when the streets fell silent. Because of this, charms were drawn close at bedtime. They offered comfort against danger that could not be seen, whether sickness, misfortune, or unseen presences. The belief was plain. Bodies might weaken in rest, but small objects could remain alert. One of the most trusted forms was the wedjatai. Its surface, often carved from blue or green faience, caught what little light the lamp gave, and seemed alive with its own gleam. The shape recalled the healed eye of Horus, a sign of strength regained, and the power of renewal. To keep it near was to believe you could share in that healing, that your body and spirit would rise whole in the morning. The eye was not seen as decoration, it was a guardian, watching when yours were closed. By its side might sit the scarab, small, rounded, fitted into the curve of your palm. This beetle, pushing its ball of earth across the ground, became a symbol of the sun's endless rising. A scarab amulet spoke of life renewed and the return of light after darkness. It often carried short inscriptions pressed into its underside, words meant to strengthen its function. For someone lying down to sleep, the scarab meant that night was only a pause and that morning would come as surely as the sun's roll across the sky. These objects were not rare or unreachable. Faience, the bright glazed ceramic in green, blue or even red, was produced widely and at low cost. A simple mould could press clay into sacred shapes that almost anyone could afford. A child clutching a modest clay eye, a farmer with a scarab tied to his wrist, and a noble laying polished stone under his head, all drew protection from the same tradition. The material varied, but the trust was universal. At times, protection was spread across the whole sleeping space. Families placed amulets at the corners of mats like markers of safety, making an invisible boundary around their rest. Others tied charms to wrists, necks, or hair before closing their eyes. A woven cord held a bead at the chest. A tied knot hid a small carving against the skin, each believed to channel divine power. These nightly gestures carried quiet repetition, not just habit, but ritual. Just as a lamp guarded against visible dark, these shapes guarded against forces no one could see. Mothers often placed a small amulet directly into their child's hand, folding soft fingers around it before stepping back. The child was told that it would protect them, and in the process they felt assured. This gesture was simple, repeated in houses across towns and villages, yet it was enough to ease fear. Sleep came faster when the night seemed less alone. Parents rested too, knowing their children were wrapped not only in cloth, but in the presence of a symbol believed to stand watch. Even the headrest, practical in its shape, carried a deeper meaning. A child or adult tilted the back of the head onto its curved top, lifting it above the mat for airflow in the heat. To us it may seem hard and unyielding, yet the shape fits the neck well enough to let rest come. But its role was more than comfort. In burials, headrests were laid under skulls to ensure the deceased would rise again. reborn into the afterlife as into a new day. Each night, then, the sleeper reenacted a small part of that passage, trusting the same object to support them between wakefulness and what lies beyond. The colours themselves were chosen with care. A glazed blue scarab could speak of water and rebirth. A green stone ice is connected to growth and life. Even red, though marked with danger, was believed to drive it away with force. In the gleam of faience glazes, Egyptians saw more than beauty. They saw the active power of hues that summoned divine strength. To hold a charm was to carry not only its shape, but the meaning bound into its colour. At night, the questions pressed close. Where did the spirit travel while the body slept? Did it venture into spaces near the world of the dead? Many believed so, and that made charms all the more important. The wandering soul could be vulnerable, and only divine symbols promised its safe return. To place an amulet by your head or against your palm was to send the gods with your spirit, guarding its passage in dreams. For many, these objects became part of the evening rhythm. Just as mats were unrolled and lamps lit, charms were touched or set in place. The repetition itself mattered. Each gesture built a boundary of security that mud brick walls could not provide. Within that rhythm, bodies released their tension, breath slowed, and night's heaviness seemed less threatening. Across Egypt, from grand houses to single-room homes, these protective objects were spread widely. Their worth came not from material richness alone, but from the trust people gave them. Cheap clay pressed into a mould could ease fear in the same way fine stone did in a palace. In the face of darkness, all reached for symbols that tied them to divine order, shrinking the unknown into something that could be held. You settle your thoughts on these images, eyes that heal, beetles that renew, charms tied with promise. Around you, thousands lie in much the same way. Some grip symbols under their chins, some hide them beneath mats, some let them rest quietly against clay jars by the doorway. The outward shapes differ, but they all meant the same feeling of safety. The night passed quietly when a divine presence felt close at hand. But protection was more than defence, it was also an invitation. By placing such shapes near, Egyptians believed gods might enter their homes, not with grandeur, but as guardians in the silence of the night. To sleep with a scarab beside you was to let the cycle of the sun echo within your own breathing. To press your cheek near a wedjatai was to let healing become part of your rest. Each small carving was not only a wall against harm, but a bridge between human and divine. The quieter the room thickens, but unease does not linger. Spirits are held at a distance, illness kept away, or so the mind believes. The weight of these objects is light, yet the calm they bring is heavy enough to carry families through the hours until dawn. All across Egypt, fathers with scarabs, mothers with beads, children with simple clay eyes, sleep under this layer of unseen protection. For a few hours at least, fear softens into a dream. As your own body adjusts into stillness, the amulet's presence fades from thought but not from purpose. The night feels steadier, and in that steadiness, you become aware of what surrounds you. The house grows quiet, but the space beyond its walls does not. A shift in the air brings sounds that ride over mud walls and through reed windows, the living rhythms of night waiting just outside. And it is into those sounds that your rest now begins to sink. The first thing you notice now is sound. With lamps low and doors drawn shut, the world outside speaks in small, steady voices. Night is never silent here, only different. Every detail sharper without the noise of daytime work. What surrounds you feels less like emptiness and more like a fabric of sounds, woven together with the dark. The Nile forms the bottom layer. Water moves against the banks with an even rhythm, like breathing you cannot see. Each push and pull brushes the reeds, a low murmur that anchors everything else. In daylight, the river was covered by shouts, carts, animals, and trade. But at night, no other sound can cover it. Lying still, you hear it as if the whole land breathes alongside you. During the flood season, that sound grows louder. The river swells its edges, frogs multiply in the marsh, and night carries extra voices, water gurgling faster, frogs calling in low choruses. It is the season itself announcing its presence through sound. Above the river's foundation come the insects. Crickets chirp with high, thin notes that repeat over and over. Frogs answer in deeper tones, rising from wetter ground. They do not sing in unison. One begins, another replies, both fading as others join. At times they are scattered. They are dense, creating patterns that ear follows without realizing. Together, they build a layer of texture, endless, changing, and constant all at once. For Egyptians, this was the background of many nights, a reminder that the land around them was alive even when their own bodies rested. Then comes the sharp contrast of dogs. The bark breaks across the soft chorus like a stone thrown into water. Its startle rough, cutting through the insects and river. Some nights a single bark echoes and fades. On others, groups of stray dogs answer each other from alleys and field edges. Their calls are unpredictable, sometimes low and short, sometimes stretched out, almost howling. In the silence after, you can still feel them, the reminder that movement continues just beyond your walls. The dog's bark does not belong to the gentle rhythm of the night, yet it becomes an essential part of what night feels like, unpredictable, edged with caution. Now and then human sound slips through as well. You may hear a distant step across dry ground, the scrape of a sandal on the dirt road, or the faint call of one voice to another. Sometimes those sounds are no more than murmurs carried by the wind, words stripped down until they are unrecognizable. Still they matter. They remind you that others are awake. That night is not a single shared rest, but a balance between sleepers and wanderers. Some find comfort in this, others tighten inside with unease. Both feelings live side by side here. Inside the house, the mud brick walls shape the way you hear it all. Thick clay softens some noises, while passages and reed-covered windows sharpen others. A frog far away may sound just outside the room. A bark beyond the lane might arrive as if on the doorstep. Courtyards open to the sky amplify the chorus of crickets. Narrow doorways funnel stray sounds into sharp bursts that vanish again. Here, the walls are less a shield and more a filter, blending the outside with the inside until the room itself belongs to the greater night. Smell works with sound to deepen the atmosphere. You breathe in the damp earth released after the heat fades. The smell of river reeds, sharp and wet, and the faint smoke of a fire gone nearly out. These scents fold themselves into the same rhythm as crickets and frogs. They become part of the same awareness, almost inseparable. At night, these layers of sensation rise clearer, uncluttered by the distractions of daylight. They are never loud, but they stay with you, steady as the sounds themselves. There are moments in this soundscape when something interrupts. A fish might leap, its splash cutting through the steady hum of the river. A jar may clink faintly as someone shifts against it in half sleep. Palm fronds brush together when a breeze moves across them, producing a faint rustle like paper. Each sound begins, ends, and disappears without warning, leaving you more aware of your listening. But these interruptions do not break the night. They prove that night, like day, is a rhythm of many notes, some constant, some fleeting. Season shifts tell their story in sound as clearly as in light. In hot months, frogs and crickets layer their voices endlessly, and the sound can seem louder than everything else. In cooler times, there are fewer insects, so single notes carry further and feel sharper. A bird crossing the night air might be heard more clearly then, its lone call filling space normally buried by other voices. To the listening ear, season declares itself through changes in this nightly chorus, proof that the rhythm of time is measured not only by sun, but also by the voices that fill the dark hours. If you press an ear closer to the ground, even the earth shares in this music. Vibrations from steps or distant calls travel differently through soil, felt as much as heard. The body senses weight, movement, and distance in ways the ear alone cannot catch. At night, especially when vision is dim, sound and touch work together. You do not hear only with ears, you notice even through your skin, through your breath, through the weight of stillness around you. But the lesson is clear and simple. Night is never empty. Some sounds soothe, others warn, but together they create the space in which you live. The Nile runs steady, insects mark time, dogs break the calm, and humans remind you of their presence. Each finds its place. Silence does not mean absence here. It means openness, space where sounds can grow sharp. This is what frames your rest, what shapes the atmosphere you share with your family. And always, you are not alone in hearing it. Your children stir at a bark, pressing charms closer to their chests. A mother listens for the same sound and thinks of tomorrow's task, whether to mend the door latch again. A grandfather breathes slowly, his heavy rhythm blending into the deeper bass of the house itself. Within this space, the soundscape is both collective and personal at once. Each family member receives it, but each interprets it in their own way. Together, these layers create a sound that is bigger than any single one. The river holds beneath, the insects cover in endless threads, and above them both, interruptions, dogs' footsteps, birds, make their mark only to vanish again. Families settle between them, breath joining as one more layer in the night's design. To rest here is to lie within a living sound, part of it while surrounded by it. You turn your attention away from the outside and back to the room itself. The voices of water, insects, and animals remain, but they fade into the background. What becomes clearer is the closeness of those lying beside you. Within this same soundscape, each body has found its chosen place, each breath measured against the next. And soon you see how this pattern of sound weaves into another rhythm, the rhythm of a family gathered to sleep. You glance around the room and see each body already cast into place, the night arranging itself in quiet order. The younger children usually lie closest together, mats pressed edge to edge. Limbs sprawl without thought, one child's arm flung across another, bare feet tucked warm into the bend of a sibling's knees. The quarrels and laughter of the day dissolve here, replaced by the gentler rhythm of sleep. Parents place themselves nearby, close enough to hear every stir or press a hand across a restless forehead. Elders most often choose the wall. their mat leaning against its cool firmness. That position is practical, support for an aging body, and symbolic too, their presence a steady backing for the rest. These choices are not random. They show a woven pattern of care shaped by both habit and need. In this single space, sleep feels less like retreat than togetherness. The room is small and closeness is unavoidable, but also deliberate. Mats overlap, shoulders brush, and breathing blends until one pulse seems to rise from many. For someone used to wide space, this nearness might press, but for most, it builds a net of reassurance. Each heartbeat joins another, every breath reminding us that no one closes their eyes alone. Closeness is more than comfort, it is also safety, shared between walls too thin to shield everything themselves. Children often lie tucked near the centre. Their position carries meaning. By instinct and duty, parents sleep within easy reach, able to shift blankets, soothe dreams, or draw a fevered child close without standing. Babies may remain pressed against a mother's chest until both slip into deeper rest together. These gestures are simple, repeated without thought, but each one affirms the child's value in the heart of the family. Bindings of care lived quietly become visible in the very positions bodies take at night. Older ones, placed near walls, shape the family circle differently. The wall is solid, a guard against the wind or whatever may scrape past the house. To lie there shows both endurance and role. Elders serve as protectors, their stillness an extension of the clay barrier itself. Parents, middle-aged, draw themselves in closer to children, bridging centre and edge. In this arrangement, families wrap their lives into concentric layers of protection, the old against the outer line, the parents as watchful middle, the children folded safe within. The order is not marked by rule or command, it happens naturally, forming from care learned over many seasons. The nearness of bodies does more than guard. It warms. Openings covered by reed mats let air filter in, and the night can feel cool against skin, especially in the months when the floodwaters settle and dampness rises. Household cloths, linens if a family's fortunate, plant fibre covers more often, are thin and light. They do something, but it is real warmth that comes when bodies gather close. Children breathe into each other's tangled hair, parents draw nearer, and heat spreads through bodies like a shared covering. Warmth given freely makes fabric unnecessary. This heat, practical in one sense, carries meaning in another. It tells each sleeper they belong to a circle of living presence. Homes like yours make such closeness natural. With only 1 or 2 rooms and often just one cleared for sleeping, everyone must draw together. The house itself presses people into a certain intimacy. Narrow walls, low ceilings, earth floors softened only by mats. Privacy is rare, but it is not expected. Nights unfold with the same ease as days spent together. Children at their parents' feet while grinding grain, elders watching while water is carried. Sleep is another part of that shared life. To lie down in view, in touch, in reach of those you know, simply continues what daylight already shaped. Not all households lived this way. In wealthier homes, space allowed a different rhythm. Separate rooms were built for parents, children, and often servants. In Amana, for instance, larger houses show divisions where privacy was possible, and the beds themselves were larger, raised, and often more finely crafted. A high official, such as Mariah, a priest in Akhenaten's time, owned a home with separate sleeping quarters, carved furnishings, and even special rooms for children. This distance provided quiet but also separation. Where most Egyptians slept side by side in one room, wealthier families unlocked another kind of night, one where silence came from solitude rather than closeness. For ordinary families, such separation was unknown. Work, meals, animals, and sleep all occupied shared space. Mats rolled against walls in the day, unrolled by night across the same floor. A chicken settling in the corner or a goat tied near the entrance might add its breathing and small movements to the room. These sounds mixed with the deeper human rhythms, folding even the family's animals into the household rest, though they stayed at the edge rather than among the children. One sentence is enough to hold them. Animals, too, often lie within the home, making night a chorus of both human sleep and quiet animal noise. When the room darkens and the fire smoulders to embers, you notice the patterns of sleep fall into place with a kind of unspoken rule. Children never lie at the farthest edge. That space against a wall or near the draught of the doorway is left to older bodies accustomed to discomfort. The youngest do not rest in isolation. Parents and grandparents remain close to hold, reach, or listen. The positions speak to enduring customs that no one calls rules, but everyone understands. They reflect how roles by age or duty naturally form an order that both shelters and sustains the household through the vulnerable hours of night. The shifting of bodies makes the arrangements tangible. A boy turns into his sister's side, their backs pressed. A woman curls herself around the smallest child, who twitches with dreams. A father shifts on his mat so that, though at the rim, he stretches long enough to touch those near him. The eldest sits upright for a moment longer, spine resting against the clay, gaze sweeping the dark room before closing eyes. All movements are quiet, almost ritual. Sleep does not pause the responsibility of care. It continues through posture and position. Even pressed close, the rhythm of many sleepers does not blur individuality. Each voice softens in its own way, the rasp of an older man's breath, the light whistle of a child's nose, deep sighs folded into women's chests. Though all are bound in the same space, these sounds join into one low chorus, each part different but connected. It is not stillness, but a fabric, woven from rest itself. In these hours, the family defines what it means to be whole, drawn together, breathing beside each other, vulnerable but never alone. To the outside, perhaps a spacious chamber would seem finer, each person with their own bed, each breath unhindered by another. Yet this solitude carries its own emptiness. Those who sleep apart lose the touch of familiar bodies, the reassurance of warmth at arm's reach, the quiet sound of dreams stirring around them. Inside your one-room home, pressed together, the communal breath becomes shield as much as touch. The family curls into a single coil of duty and affection. It is not luxury, but it is presence, and that presence gives safety that the walls alone cannot provide. The night draws in until all that remains is the weight of bodies at rest. Silence beyond the walls meets the layered sounds inside, and your body holds them together as one. You feel the closeness steady you, though your eyes press shut. What surrounds you now is more than touch or breath. It is the sense that even in this deepest vulnerability, you are kept not alone, but within the folds of kin. And as your body sinks further into stillness, you notice a shift of another kind. The room remains with mats, with warmth, with closeness, but within you, something feels untethered, as if part of yourself might begin to drift where walls and family cannot follow. This is the threshold where rest becomes something more, where another kind of journey quietly takes shape. When your eyes close, another kind of life begins. The still room feels heavy with warmth, yet your mind loosens and an unseen space opens. To the Egyptians, this was the moment when dreams began, a time when the soul self, the Bai, might rise and drift free. They pictured it as a small bird with a human face, hovering over the sleeping body, tethered by breath, yet able to travel far. What it carried back would not be random. Dreams mattered, and what was seen mattered too. Dreams were not just passing shadows of the mind. They were trusted as messages, and each one might hold comfort, warning, or counsel. You imagine lying quietly, feeling the closeness of family, when suddenly, in a dream, you hear a voice you knew long ago, one that speaks as if no time has passed. Many Egyptians believed ancestors could step into these visions, or that gods would send guidance through images. Dreams became a bridge, soft but strong, linking the living with both the divine and the departed. Sometimes such visions came naturally at home. At other times, you might seek them deliberately. In temples across the land, practices existed for what we now call dream incubation. Here you would wash, prepare, and lie on a special bed in hopes that a god would send healing or advice in your sleep. The dream, once received, was often shared with priests or interpreters who listened carefully and weighed each image. These were not casual stories, but matters of decision-making. A dream could change when to plant, whether to travel, or even what kind of offering to give. Most nights, however, dreams unfolded under the familiar roof of one-room houses. Families knew how to treat them. They could turn to guides written down in what were known as dream books. The best known to us belonged to Khen-Hekep-Shef, a scribe in the time of Ramesses II. Preserved on papyrus, it listed more than 100 dreams, with short notes about their meaning. Each vision was marked as either auspicious, favourable, or inauspicious. The warnings were often written in red ink, a colour tied to danger and ill luck. Some images promised health or long life, others carried heaviness. These books were not elaborate works of poetry, but practical tools, stored at hand like any reference to be opened when someone woke unsettled. The symbols could seem surprising. A dream of death, for example, might be read as a sign of long life. Looking out of a window could be seen as promising, while dreaming of your face in a mirror pointed to ill fate, even a call from the restless dead. The meaning of each image was not treated lightly. You did not ignore such moments or dismiss them as meaningless. Instead, you spoke of them by lamplight, seeking someone in the household who knew the old markings, who could listen and match dream to meaning. Mornings often began, not with work but with memory. While bodies stretched and the day's tools were reached for, someone would describe what they had seen in the night. A child might recall a strange vision of animals. A farmer might mutter about water flowing broad and endless. The family gathered the fragments before they faded, weighing each one. It was not only a way of sharing but of planning, of adjusting paths to the unseen guidance of the night. In this way, dreams shaped the rhythm of daily life, just as much as the sun or the Nile. The bar itself gave form to these beliefs. As it left the body, it wandered into spaces where gods and ancestors might wait. It was seen as travelling lightly, always able to return when the sun rose. Death was thought to work similarly, a soul drifting loose. The difference was that in sleep, you came back. Waking each morning carried the same symbolic power as renewal, The soul had returned safely, carrying with it visions that tied the living to eternity. Certain dreams stood out more sharply, telling people whether to approach the day with confidence or caution. Yet it was never a catalogue of clear rules. Instead, dreams opened questions. Were you being warned? Were you being promised something? Meaning was always close enough to move decisions, never so distant as to be ignored. That uncertainty made dreams feel alive, still stirring when morning tasks began. This nightly theatre could wrap ordinary people as firmly as kings. A farmer, after a troubling vision, might hold his sick child closer, choosing not to go to the fields at first light. A merchant might walk a different road after dreaming of danger. Even small choices of timing or direction were influenced, not because the dream demanded obedience, but because to disregard it might be to disregard the gods themselves. In a world where the unseen was as real as the seen, caution made sense. The sense of connection could also bring comfort. To dream was to feel that guidance hovered near. The great river, the animals, even the sun became symbols that stepped into night's stage and reminded people of life cycles. Whether these messages promised safety or spoke of risk, they gave life a texture beyond the ordinary. The night became another teacher, another guide. What held all of this together was the act of trusting dreams, of giving them a place equal to waking thought. The Egyptians lived with closeness in their homes, with closeness in their families, and in sleep. That closeness extended to gods and ancestors alike. Fires dimmed, sounds faded, but through dreams, voices still reached them. The bird soul drifting above each sleeper returned at dawn with its gifts, and families carried those gifts into their day. You feel now the steady rhythm of that world, a simple house, its mats spread side by side, a single lamp guttering low. In it, dreams do not belong only to one person, but to everyone listening come morning. They are spoken of, weighed, remembered, and treated as part of the night's work. Through them, even in sleep, the household met with powers that shaped their fate. And as the mind wanders into unknown spaces, the body remains behind. It too asks for care, for gestures that prepare it to meet the night. Dreams begin without effort, but the act of lying down, of washing, smoothing, and readying oneself for stillness, that is also its own form of ritual. Before the family can fully enter rest, the body itself must first be prepared. You turn to the small basin near the wall, water caught earlier from the river. Its surface trembles in the lamplight. You bend low, scoop it with your hands, and let the coolness pass across your face and arms. Dust and sweat slip away, and the heaviness of the day thins. The sensation is brief, but it changes everything. You reach for a cloth, pat yourself dry, and the body feels lighter, as if it has learned that the day has ended. Oil follows. A jar waits nearby, plain in form, but carefully kept. You tip it into your palm and smooth it across your skin in slow circles. The mixture carries faint perfume, softened by plant oils and lime. It leaves no foam, no lather, only slickness that coats dry arms and shoulders. Hands rub together until warmth spreads through them, and skin shines in the dim light. This is care both simple and essential. Muscles loosen, cracks quiet beneath the balm, and the air smells faintly of earth and flowers. To anoint yourself at night is to remind the body that it is valued. Hair too is attended, though it is quickly done. Many shave their heads close to ward off lice and heat, and wigs are worn when needed. To set aside a wig at night, combed and oiled into order, is simply to shed the face of the day. What remains is the bare scalp, cool under your palm, as plain and unadorned as the mat itself. The small line of kohl around the eyes fades next. You dampen a cloth and wipe gently until the black lifts away in smudges. Once sharp and protective beneath sunlight, it no longer serves a purpose. Clean skin shows again, smooth lids closing with nothing heavy drawn across them. The gesture restores you to yourself. Around the room, others repeat the same sequence. A daughter dips her face in the basin, shaking off droplets. A boy rubs oil carefully along his arms. A woman wipes her lids, leaving faint dark marks on the cloth. The rhythm is quiet, steady, shared in households across the village. The sound of water poured, corks pressed back into jars, cloth drawn across skin. After sunset, these acts are as regular as breathing. The tools of these rituals line the wall. Small jars of alabaster, clay or glass hold creams and perfumes. Combs rest beside them, carved simple but durable. Archaeologists have found these same objects in tombs, where they were buried with the dead. The reason is clear. The same oils, combs and linens that prepared the living before sleep prepared the body for eternity. These nightly acts echo the care of the dead, anointing flesh, arranging cloth marking a transition from one state to another. The echo is not sombre, instead it steadies the spirit. To cleanse at night was to remind yourself that everything has its rhythm. The sun setting, the body washing, the lamps dimming. Each step folded daily life into the cosmic order Egyptians called Ma'at, a balance between cleanliness, ritual and rest. Even the poorest families tried to hold a little oil aside, enough for the small gestures that signalled peace had been made with the day. You smooth a strip of linen over your shoulders. It may be coarse flax or softened cloth, depending on wealth, but it lies light against the skin either way. The wrap covers modestly, leaving limbs free to move easily across the mat. Its feel is cooling, almost delicate after heat and dust. These small details matter less for display than for the quiet dignity of being composed, ready, and clean. As you sit, you notice the change spreading through the room. The air that once held smoke, sweat, and grit now carries a faint blend of perfumes and damp cloth. The hush of tasks completed hovers in the corners. Each person looks different. Eyes bare, skin fresh, hair smoothed, bodies arranged beneath thin wraps of cloth. The household has shifted in tone along with the scents, from heat and toil to calm and readiness. The connection between body and spirit becomes clearer when you think again of burial. Priests washed, anointed, and wrapped the dead in linen before placing them into tombs, prepared for eternity. You see the same gestures replayed on a smaller scale each night. Oil smoothed across skin, cloth drawn close, hair set aside or cleaned. To lie down prepared in this way was more than comfort. It was to live with the belief that every night's rest rehearsed a greater passage still to come. The difference is felt immediately. Skin cools against mats, linen settles with ease, and breathing grows steady. There is relief in this rhythm. Oil for the body, water for the dust, cloth for repose. Thoughts too find themselves quieter, easier to hold, easier to release. The weight of tools and work has been brushed aside, and all that is left is a steadiness that welcomes stillness. These habits are repeated year after year, across generations, and the memory of them settles just as firmly as the dust washed off your skin. The clearest truth is this: each ritual offers release, not escape from life, but continuity with it. To wash, oil, and arrange yourself is to close one day and prepare gently for the next. All around, families lower themselves onto reed mats, clean limbs stretching across woven surfaces. A father adjusts his cloth. A mother presses a child's wig comb flat. A child yawns as they sink into linen-smoothed skin. Every person has gone through their own gestures, and now they gather as one. The air, touched lightly by oil and water, carries into the night as a signature that these lives were cared for before they slept. The lamp near the wall burns low. Flame dips, no longer bright but still alive, swaying as oil thins. In its glow, the last jars of oil glint faintly and palely. Shadows rise taller across the clay walls. The house has shifted from action to stillness. Its rhythm slowed to breath alone. What was once sharp with effort has grown round and soft. You stretch your arm once more, the cool mat pressing back against oiled skin. Muscle relaxes, thought slows, and a hush grows proper and deep. Around you, family breathes in sequence, and the house collects their sounds into a single hum. Beyond the door, the insects and river still carry on, but they feel distant now. What matters most is here. The day has been washed away. Oil clings in the air, clean hair cools against skin, linen wraps touch lightly across bodies. Each act has stripped away the grit of toil. Each gesture has tied you closer to ritual. Each care has set the night in motion. You feel composed, gathered, and quietly shaped for rest. In this moment, you realize there's nothing more to do but meet the dark as it gathers. The flame will not hold much longer. Its ember bends lower with each breath of air. All tasks are finished, all bodies are prepared, all jars and combs are still. The room itself exhales and a silence begins to settle in heavier layers. What remains now is to let that silence fall all the way. The glow of the lamp has thinned to almost nothing. A faint ember quivers, only a hint of red in the clay bowl. Darkness folds over the room so fully that its corners blur away. Your body loosens into the mat, and weight pulls downward in a way it did not allow during the day. It no longer feels like time moves forward. You lie between day and morning, as if this space were its own kind of pause, carried only by slow breath. Outside, the street has given itself over to stillness. No doors close, no sandals scrape, no voices call. Where once you caught the bark of a stray dog, or the faint shuffle of someone passing, there is nothing now. Air slips quietly through the reed mat at the window, adding only a soft hiss, almost like a sigh. Beneath it all, the Nile moves without interruption. Its water rhythm never stops, carrying reassurance that the world continues, balanced even as sight and sound lessen. The breaths of your family draw your attention inward. A child exhales with a ragged edge, then deepens into regular notes. A parent breathes in slow measure, chest rising and falling with steady calm. An elder at the wall lets out longer, weighted sighs that seem to fill the air beyond themselves. Each is different, yet all blend to create one slow chorus. It is not just sound to you, it is an anchor, comfort, a reminder that life knits together, even through silence. There is always a shadow of tension at this hour. The dark transforms the room, swallowing shapes into corners where they lose definition. Yet for Egyptians the night was not chaos. They trusted in Ma'at, the principle of order and balance, said to hold the sun in its path and courts in their fairness. That trust flowed into the night too. Even when eyes could see little, the belief that the same order extended into darkness allowed them to rest. Ma'at was not limited to daylight. It was the thread that tied waking and dreaming, the Nile's flow, and even the silence beyond the reed screen. Shadows sometimes stir imagination. Was it only the wind across the courtyard? Was it movement in the lane? Your hand reaches the amulet by your mat. Cool stone presses into the palm, the shape of the eye traced without sight. It steadies you. The scarab near your head adds its still weight. Tangible things, near to the skin, remind you that unseen powers guard where walls cannot. You pull them close, and unease melts into calm. Air carries another layer of sensation. Cool fingers brushing the back of your neck, or the bare ankle where linen shifts aside. Then warmth returns, radiating from the body, pressed just near your mat. The balance is gentle. Cold and heat alternate, passing over you like two hands working together, one soothing the other. In this turning of opposites, you feel steadiness that echoes the balance known as ma'at, not spoken in words but lived in the body. When your eyes close again, you feel how this balance exists beyond your household. Just as flood and drought cycle with the river, just as the sun dies and renews itself across the horizon, the pattern is everywhere. Egyptians shaped their days within it. They judged disputes, measured seasons, and trusted the gods to keep order intact. Night did not cancel that balance, and sleep did not remove it. What steadied the kingdom steadied the quiet of its families. Sleep itself reminded them of larger truths. It was often pictured as the twin of death, not heavy, not grim, but a smaller echo of eternity. Each evening people washed, anointed, wrapped in fine or plain linen, then lay side by side in a darkness where vision ended. The same gestures would one day prepare them for the afterlife. This link made night rest feel less like the end of the day and more like a rehearsal. To surrender oneself and rise again at dawn was to live out, in small rhythm, the destiny promised after life. On your mat, muscles surrender one by one. Shoulders let go first, then jaw, then fingertips resting lightly on the fibre. Breath meets the rhythm around you, keeping pace with what is shared in the room. You listen, and instead of fear you feel closeness, the press of family's presence, the flow of the great river outside, the same truths carried into stillness. What you hold is not emptiness, but continuity. The lamp's glow slips down to almost nothing. The faint smell of oil fades, leaving only a trace of warmth mixed with the clean scent of skin rubbed with balm. Darkness takes all outline, yet in that absence touch grows sharper. The mat under you, cloth across your chest, the arm laid loosely beside yours. Senses narrow, but what remains is enough to anchor you. What you cannot see does not harm you. What you feel steadies instead. Every rise and fall of breath closes the circle of the day. Work and weariness, food and story, cleansing and sleep, they join into one rhythm of living. Together, your family carries this moment as they carried all that came before. You do not dream alone. Their closeness wraps you. The room seals around you, and the pattern of sound makes the invisible solid. You release breath again and think of the larger circle. Death for Egyptians meant a departure, but never an ending. Their hope was continuation, renewal on another plane, where the same cycle carried forward. Each nightly descent into sleep echoed that hope in miniature. Bodies rested, spirits might wander, but dawn demonstrated return. In trusting that rhythm, fear gave way to peace. The thought lingers a moment, soft. To sleep is not abandonment, but joining in the same pattern. Body loosening, spirit stretching outward, breath binding you back to the world around you. The river flows, the family rests. Tomorrow waits, not as uncertainty, but as return. From here, senses blur. Warmth from those near you, coolness across skin where cloth has slipped, steady rhythm of air moving in and out. The amulet lies small but heavy with meaning, close at hand. Together they weave a comfort that presses gently against thought until it drifts away. Night belongs to you now, not with fear, but with belonging. Sleep drifts in slowly, in the same way the river turns, patient, unbroken, touching always toward the next shore. Dreams will come, but you are not lost. You are within the same rhythm that shaped the lives of those before you. Their night is yours, and their rest folds gently into your own. And as this moment deepens, you let yourself drift further, carried by breath and steady flow, into the quiet beyond. If this calm passage through an ancient night has eased you, I invite you to like this video or subscribe for more journeys into lives long ago. Now the quiet holds you completely, and you are ready to be carried onward. To sleep in ancient Egypt was to share warmth with family and to trust the small guardians beside you. Night joined the body's stillness with the spirit's wandering, carrying dreams into unseen places that felt both fragile and eternal. As you rest tonight, you lie within the same rhythm, the hush of breath, the closeness of others, the steady presence of the river long ago. This rhythm has comforted people along the Nile for millennia. If this calm journey has helped you unwind, linger a moment with us and subscribe for more quiet histories. You've survived another scorching day in Imperial Rome's crowded streets, dodged the endless carts and shouting merchants, and finally climbed 5 flights to your tiny room. Now you can rest, or can you? As darkness falls, the real Roman night begins, and it's nothing like you expect. The city's second day is about to start, with sounds that will keep you awake until dawn, and dangers that make daytime seem peaceful. Through one person's complete experience, we'll show you why living in history's greatest city meant never really being able to sleep. But Rome wasn't always this way. To understand how nights became so restless, we need to go back to when they were something entirely different. Before we settle in, if you enjoy these relaxing journeys into the past, like the video and subscribe for more quiet history evenings. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's get comfortable and ease into tonight's journey. You wake before sunrise in the early Republic, feeling the cool morning air on your skin as you step outside your simple wooden home. The world around you holds a deep quiet that will vanish from Roman life forever in just a few centuries. Your bare feet touch the packed earth outside your door, still damp with dew. The air carries the fresh scent of wild herbs and the distant sound of a rooster calling from a neighbour's yard. Your day begins with the gentle bleating of goats in their small pen behind your house. You walk over to them, your hands already knowing the rhythm of morning chores. The goats push against your legs, warm and familiar. You pour grain from a clay jar, listening to the soft sounds they make as they eat. Your chickens flutter and cluck as you scatter seeds for them, their feathers catching the first pale light of dawn. The well at the centre of your small settlement draws you next. You lower the wooden bucket, hearing it splash far below. Your arms work the rope, pulling up cool, clear water that will last through the day. Other neighbours move quietly through their own morning tasks. A woman nods to you as she tends her small garden. A man leads his ox toward the fields beyond the village. You move through these early hours with purpose, but without the rushing that will one day consume Roman mornings. Your small plot of land waits for you as the sun climbs higher. You take up your iron-tipped plough, feeling its familiar weight in your hands. The wooden handle has been smoothed by years of work, shaped perfectly to your grip. You guide the plough through rich, dark soil that opens cleanly behind you. The work connects you to something larger than yourself. This simple, agricultural life that supports Rome when it's still just a small city-state among many others. The sun grows warmer as morning turns to midday. Sweat dampens your wool tunic. Your hands grip the plough handle tighter as the ground grows harder. You pause to wipe your forehead, looking across the small field that will feed your family through winter. The satisfaction runs deep. Every furrow matters. Every seed planted strengthens not just your household, but the growing community that depends on farmers like you. The afternoon brings different tasks. You repair a section of stone wall, fitting heavy stones carefully together. Your wife works beside you through many of these hours, tending the vegetable garden and milking the goat in the evening light. Together, you bring the animals into their shelter as shadows grow longer. As the sun begins to set, you feel the deep tiredness that comes from honest work. Every muscle in your body has been used today. Your shoulders ache from the plough. Your hands are sore and dirty, marked with small cuts and calluses that tell the story of your days, but this exhaustion feels good. It is the tiredness of accomplishment, of providing, of work that matters. The evening air grows cool against your skin. You can smell wood smoke rising from cooking fires throughout the village. Someone is roasting grain, and the nutty scent drifts across the settlement. A dog barks once, then settles into quiet. Sheep bleat softly in the distance. These sounds layer together into the peaceful symphony of a countryside evening. You and your wife share a simple meal as darkness deepens. Barley porridge, still warm from the fire. Cheese made from your goat's milk. Herbs you gathered from the hillsides. The food tastes especially good because your body has earned it through the day's work. You eat slowly, feeling the nourishment restore your tired muscles. After the meal, you tend the fire, adding wood to keep coals glowing through the night. The warm light flickers on the wooden walls of your home. Your wife prepares your bed, shaking out the wool blankets and smoothing the straw mattress. The familiar rituals of evening feel comforting, marking the end of another day of purposeful work. Outside, the countryside settles into true quiet. Crickets begin their evening song, a gentle chorus that will last until dawn. An owl calls from the oak trees beyond your field. The night air carries the scent of cooling earth and the last wisps of cooking smoke. Stars appear one by one in the clear sky, brighter than they will ever be again. Once Rome grows large and full of light, you lie down on your simple bed, feeling your tired body sink gratefully into rest. Your muscles relax completely, released from the day's good work. The exhaustion that fills every part of you is clean and honest. The tiredness that comes from using your body as it was meant to be used, from work that feeds your family and builds something lasting. Your breathing deepens as sleep approaches. The sounds of the peaceful countryside drift through your window, the gentle bleating of sheep, the whisper of wind through barley fields, the distant trickle of the stream that waters your land. Your hands, still rough from the day's work, rest easily on the wool blanket. Your mind lets go of the day's tasks, knowing they were completed well. This is the deepest, most peaceful sleep Romans will ever know. Here in the countryside, before the great city calls people from their land, Night still means true rest. Your tired body has earned this darkness and quiet. The work of your hands has meaning. The food you ate came from soil you tended. The sleep that takes you now is the reward for a day well spent. But even now, just beyond the hills, something new is growing. Roads are being built, markets are expanding. The small settlement that will become the greatest city in the world is already beginning to change how Romans live and work. This perfect balance between day and night, between work and rest, between effort and peace, will soon give way to something entirely different. The quiet that surrounds you now will be replaced by sounds you cannot yet imagine. By the time of Imperial Rome, around 100 AD, those sounds had become a reality for nearly 1 million people crowded into the world's greatest city. You hear wooden wheels on stone, voices calling across narrow streets where once only birdsong filled the morning air. Your simple wooden house now sits among thousands of others, pressed together along winding streets that seem to multiply each year. The Rome around you has grown into something that never sleeps, never stops, never gives you the quiet your body still craves from those old farming days. Your morning begins not with the gentle bleating of goats, but with the sharp crack of a whip and the rumble of heavy carts already moving past your window. You step outside into air that tastes different, thick with dust kicked up by countless feet, tinged with smoke from hundreds of cooking fires, heavy with the smell of too many people living too close together. The sun that once warmed your fields now beats down on stone and tile, turning the narrow streets into ovens that trap heat and noise. The forum draws you forward like a river of sound and movement. Merchants shout prices for grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, silk from distant lands you cannot name. Their voices compete with each other, each trying to rise above the others until the air fills with a wall of human noise that makes your head ring. You push through crowds that press against you from all sides, bodies that smell of olive oil and sweat, perfume and garlic, the metallic scent of coins changing hands constantly. A baker calls out his wares, just steps from where a blacksmith pounds hot iron. The bread smells wonderful, but the hammer blows crash through your skull with each strike. Children dart between the legs of adults, their laughter mixing with the braying of donkeys loaded with goods. Slaves hurry past carrying amphora of oil and wine, their bare feet slapping against stone worn smooth by endless traffic. The heat builds as the day grows older. Stone buildings trap the warmth and reflect it back at you until the air shimmers. Your tunic sticks to your skin with sweat that never quite dries in the humid press of the crowd. The smell of roasting meat from food stalls mixes with the less pleasant odours of the great sewer that runs beneath the streets. Your stomach churns from the combination of scents, appetizing and revolting all at once. You try to find shade, but thousands of others have the same idea. Every portico, every covered walkway fills with people seeking relief from the sun. Their conversations blend into a constant hum that follows you everywhere. A group of senators discusses grain shipments, merchants argue over the price of pottery, women gossip about their neighbours, while children wail in their arms. The noise layers upon itself until you cannot pick out individual voices anymore. The public baths offer no escape from the chaos. You enter, hoping for the peaceful washing you once enjoyed at your village, but find yourself in an echoing marble chamber packed with hundreds of bodies. The sound of splashing water combines with loud conversations that bounce off the walls and ceiling. Steam rises from the hot pools, making the air thick and hard to breathe. Men conduct business even here, their voices carrying across the water as they negotiate deals and discuss politics. Your head begins to throb from the constant assault on your senses. The peaceful rhythm you once knew has been replaced by something that batters your mind and body. The sounds never stop long enough for your thoughts to settle. Even when one group of merchants finishes their shouting, another begins. When the hammering in one workshop pauses, the hammering in the next continues. The exhaustion that settles into your body feels different from the honest tiredness of farm work. Your muscles ache not from lifting and digging, but from fighting through crowds, from tensing against the constant push of other bodies, from the strain of trying to hear important conversations over the background roar of city life. Your mind feels battered by the endless stream of sounds, sights, and smells competing for attention. This transformation represents something deeper than just urban growth. The citizen soldier farmers, who once sustained the early republic, have given way to an urban economy built on slavery and goods imported from across the empire. The meaningful work that once connected Romans to their land has been replaced by the struggle to survive in a city that depends on others to feed it. As the afternoon drags toward evening, you realize the day has worn you down in ways you never experienced in the countryside. The work of simply surviving in this urban maze, navigating crowds, conducting business over shouting voices, breathing air thick with dust and smoke, has left you as tired as a full day of ploughing ever did. But this tiredness carries no satisfaction, no sense of accomplishment. You have survived another day in the great city, but you have not built anything lasting or fed anyone who needed care. The sun begins its descent behind the tall buildings that block out so much sky. You think longingly of the broad horizons you once watched as evening approached your fields. Here, you catch only glimpses of sunset between structures that tower over the narrow streets. The air remains thick and warm, trapped between walls of stone and brick. The sounds show no sign of diminishing as darkness approaches. You make your way through streets that seem even more crowded as people hurry to finish their daily business. The noise follows you, bouncing off buildings, echoing from doorways, mixing into a constant roar that has become the soundtrack of your life. Your feet ache from walking on hard stone instead of soft earth. Your throat feels dry from breathing dust and smoke instead of clean country air. As you finally reach your building and begin climbing the narrow stairs to your small room, you carry with you the exhaustion of a day spent fighting the city, rather than working with the natural world. The sounds of Rome continue to drift through your window. Voices, wheels, hammering, the endless activity of a place that never truly rests. You close your eyes hoping for the peace that darkness once brought to your countryside home. But as the last light fades from your window, you begin to understand that in this great city, sunset means something entirely different. The rumble of heavy wheels approaching your building announces the start of Rome's second day. These are not the small carts that moved carefully through daytime crowds. Roman law banned wheeled traffic during daylight hours in most parts of the city, forcing all heavy commerce into the darkness. Now massive wagons carry loads that would crush a person, blocks of marble from distant quarries, enormous amphorae filled with grain from Egypt, heavy timbers from the forests of Gaul, The wheels are iron-rimmed and wooden, designed for strength rather than quiet. They bite into the cobblestones with each revolution, sending vibrations through the ground and up into the buildings that line the narrow streets. Your window rattles as the first cart passes directly below. The building shudders from foundation to roof. You feel the vibration in your bones, in your teeth, in the simple wooden bed frame that holds your exhausted body. Another cart follows immediately behind the first, then another. The procession seems endless, each wagon loaded with goods that feed and supply nearly 1 million people who cannot survive on what the city produces within its own walls. All of this must move through the streets when daylight traffic makes passage impossible. The drivers shout to each other over the thunderous noise of their wheels. Their voices are harsh and loud, trained to carry over the sound of their heavy cargo. They call out warnings about obstacles in the dark streets. They curse at their oxen when the animals stumble under the massive weight. They argue about which route to take through the maze of narrow passages that connect the warehouses to the markets. Workers appear from shadowy doorways to help unload the precious cargo. Their metal tools clang against stone as they pry open wooden crates and maneuver heavy amphorae into storage buildings. Iron crowbars scrape against marble blocks. Bronze fittings crash to the ground as workers struggle with ropes and pulleys in the dim light of oil lamps and torches. You try to bury your head under your thin pillow, but the sounds penetrate everything. The vibration travels through the stone and timber of your building, reaching you no matter how you position yourself. Your exhausted mind, which craved the quiet rest your body earned through the day's trials, finds no escape from the industrial symphony that now fills the night. The main thoroughfares that were clogged with pedestrians and small vendors during daylight hours now accommodate these giants of commerce. The streets that seemed narrow when filled with people become impossibly constricted when massive wagons try to pass each other. Drivers shout instructions and curses as they navigate tight corners and steep inclines. The sound echoes off the tall buildings that line the streets, multiplying and amplifying until it seems to come from everywhere at once. What might be bearable on an open road becomes overwhelming in the stone canyon of urban streets. Each wheel strike against the cobblestone, bounces off the walls, and returns as a double or triple impact of sound. Your neighbours share your frustration. Through the thin walls of your apartment building, you hear other people moving restlessly in their beds. Someone pounds on their wall in angry protest. A baby starts crying, probably awakened by the thunderous passage of a particularly heavy load. An old man opens his window and shouts down at the drivers, though his voice is completely lost in the greater roar. The workers show no consideration for the sleeping citizens above them. Their job is to move goods quickly and efficiently while the streets allow passage for their enormous wagons. They work with practiced coordination, but their efficiency requires loud communication and heavy tools that make sleep impossible for anyone within several blocks of the major supply routes. Sleep becomes not just difficult, but completely impossible. Your body, already pushed beyond its limits by the sensory overload of daytime Rome, now faces a second shift of activity that demands alertness rather than rest. You lie in your bed feeling the exhaustion in every muscle, but your mind cannot let go to sleep while the building continues to shake, and the noise continues to assault your ears. Hours pass and still the carts continue. Your body grows more tired, but also more tense from the constant noise. The exhaustion that should lead to peaceful sleep instead becomes a painful weariness that offers no relief. You understand now why the wealthier Romans build their homes on quiet hills, away from the commercial districts. Only those with money can escape the night shift of urban commerce. The frustration builds as you realize that surviving the chaos of daytime Rome was only half the challenge. The other half begins when darkness falls, and the real work of keeping the massive population supplied takes over the streets. Your tired mind, which carried the stress and noise of the day, now faces hours more of sensory assault when it most needs quiet. Romans called this the second day, and now you understand why night had become as busy and demanding as day, but in different ways. Instead of crowds and merchants and the heat of the sun, darkness brought the thunder of heavy commerce and the impossible task of sleeping while the city's supply chain rolled endlessly past your window. The thunderous parade of wagons finally begins to fade as the deepest part of the night approaches. Your exhausted body starts to hope for a few hours of rest before dawn brings the daytime chaos back to the streets. But as you shift in your bed, trying to find a position that might finally allow sleep, a different scent drifts through your window, one that makes your heart race with a terror far worse than any noise. Smoke drifts through your window, carrying with it the terror that haunts every Roman night. The scent is faint at first, just a whisper of something burning that might be nothing more than a neighbour's cooking fire. But in Rome's towering apartment buildings, that innocent smell carries the weight of your deepest fear. You sit up in bed, your tired body suddenly alert, listening for sounds that might tell you whether the smoke means danger or safety. The wooden buildings that house Rome's poor rise 5, 6, even 7 stories into the night sky. Over 70 feet of poorly constructed timber packed so tightly together that you can reach across the narrow street and touch the building opposite yours. These insulae stretch upward like wooden towers, each floor divided into smaller and smaller rooms as they climb higher. The wealthy live on the ground floors with thick stone walls and easy escape routes. You live near the top where the walls are thin wood and plaster, where cooking fires burn dangerously close to dry timber, where escape means a long journey down narrow stairs through smoke and flame. Your building creaks and settles around you as thousands of people sleep in spaces barely larger than closets. Cooking fires burn on every floor, their flames dancing close to wooden beams that have grown dry and brittle over years of heat, and cold oil lamps flicker in tiny rooms where families crowd together, their flames just one stumble away from disaster. The smell of smoke that woke you could be coming from anywhere, a lamp knocked over by a restless sleeper, cooking oil that grew too hot, embers that jumped from a brazier onto a woolen blanket. You move to your small window and peer down into the narrow street below. The distance to the ground looks enormous in the darkness. Other windows show the faint glow of oil lamps, where people like you are also checking for signs of danger. The fear moves through the building like a living thing, pass from person to person, through thin walls and shared anxiety. Someone coughs in the room next to yours. A baby cries 2 floors below. Everyone knows that fire travels fast through these wooden towers. The insulae become death traps when flames start climbing. The narrow stairways that seemed manageable during the day turn into bottlenecks where panic spreads faster than fire itself. People 7 stories up have only one way down, and if smoke fills that passage, there is nowhere else to go. You have heard the screams. echoing through narrow streets when flames take hold of a building. The sound stays with you long after the fire burns itself out. Fire needs only minutes to turn a familiar neighborhood into a hellscape. The orange glow starts small, perhaps just a flicker visible through one window, but wooden buildings burn with hungry speed, and flames leap from room to room, floor to floor, building to building across the narrow gaps that separate one insula from the next. The night sky lights up with a glow that can be seen from miles away, and the smell of burning wood and worse things fills the air. You remember a fire from just 2 months ago, only 6 streets from where you now lie, listening for sounds of danger. The flame started on the 3rd floor of a building, much like yours. By the time people on the upper floors realized what was happening, smoke had filled the stairway, and escape was impossible. The screams that rose from those trapped rooms still echo in your mind when you try to sleep. Some jumped from windows rather than burn, their bodies hitting the cobblestones with sounds that no one who heard them could ever forget. Every Roman goes to bed knowing they might wake to flames or never wake at all. This fear lives in your chest, a constant weight that makes deep sleep almost impossible. Even when exhaustion finally takes you, part of your mind stays alert for the smell of smoke, the sound of crackling wood, the shouts that mean fire has found another victim. The terror becomes part of the night itself, as much a feature of Roman darkness as the thunder of supply carts and the constant noise of urban life. Sleep becomes not a peaceful escape from the day's troubles, but another form of vigilance. You sleep lightly, ready to wake at the first sign of danger. Your dreams are often filled with flames and smoke, with narrow stairways that lead nowhere, with the desperate search for safety that might not exist. Tonight, the smoke smell fades as you watch from your window. Perhaps it was only someone's evening fire burning down to coals, but the fear remains, settled into your bones like the ache from the day's work. You know that fire stalks these wooden towers every night, looking for the right combination of dry wood, careless flame, and wind to carry destruction from building to building. Other people in your insula are also listening, also watching, also carrying the weight of this constant threat. The woman who lives below you lost her brother in a fire last winter. The old man across the hall keeps a rope tied to his bed frame, though everyone knows it would never reach the ground from the 7th floor. These small preparations offer more comfort than real safety, but they help people feel they have some control over their fate. Fire has transformed Roman nights from rest time into vigilance time. The darkness that should bring peace instead brings the heightened awareness that comes with living in constant danger. Your body may be exhausted from the day's struggles with crowds and noise and heat, but your mind cannot fully let go while wooden buildings packed with people and flame create the perfect conditions for disaster. As you finally settle back into bed, the smoke smell completely gone now. You carry with you the knowledge that this same scene plays out every night across Rome's crowded neighborhoods. Thousands of people lie in wooden towers, listening for danger, sleeping lightly, knowing that the orange glow could appear without warning and turn their familiar world into something unrecognizable and deadly. The exhaustion in your body grows heavier, but rest remains as elusive as safety itself. Your neighbours argue through paper-thin walls about money they don't have and space they can't afford. The woman next door shouts at her husband about the rent while their baby cries endlessly. Above you, heavy footsteps pace back and forth as someone else struggles with sleeplessness. Below, A man coughs violently, the sound echoing up through the wooden floors that separate your cramped rooms. Every sound from every family travels through these flimsy walls as if they were made of cloth instead of wood and plaster. Your single room barely fits the straw mattress you share with your wife and 2 small children. The walls around you are so thin you can hear your neighbours breathing. When the family across the narrow hallway whispers, their words drift through the gaps between wooden planks. When someone 3 rooms down drops a clay pot, the crash startles you, as if it happened in your own space. Privacy is a luxury that only the wealthy can afford, and you live surrounded by the constant noise of too many people packed into too little space. The insular tower around you, like wooden mountains, each floor carved into smaller and smaller rooms as they climb higher toward the sky. Most of Rome's population lives in these apartment blocks, making your experience of sleepless nights and overcrowded conditions typical rather than unusual. Wealthy Romans live on the ground floors with thick stone walls, spacious rooms, and easy escape routes if fire comes. You live 5 floors up, where the walls grow thinner and the rooms grow smaller with each level. Your neighbours are shop workers, labourers, freed slaves trying to build new lives, all of you crowded together in spaces barely large enough for one person, let alone entire families. Your day began before dawn, with back-breaking work in the markets below. You carried heavy sacks of grain, loaded carts with pottery, and moved goods from warehouses to shops, while the wealthy Romans still slept in their comfortable beds. Your muscles ache from lifting and hauling, and bending in the hot sun. Your hands are rough and cut from handling rough materials. Your back throbs from work that would kill a softer man. But this labour barely earns enough coin to pay for your tiny room and simple food. The exhaustion from your day's work mixes with the weariness from last night's sleeplessness to create a tiredness that goes deeper than muscle and bone. You worked all day after sleeping only an hour or 2 the night before. The supply carts thundered past your window until nearly dawn, their iron wheels grinding against cobblestone with sounds that shook your building. The fear of fire kept you alert even when the carts finally stopped. Now you face another night of the same sounds, the same fears, the same impossible attempt to find rest. Your thin blanket provides little comfort against the night air that seeps through gaps in the wooden walls. The mattress beneath you is mostly straw with a few rags sewn together to hold it in place. You can feel every piece of straw poking through the cloth, and the wooden floor beneath offers no softness. The wealthy Romans sleep on thick mattresses filled with soft wool, covered by fine blankets that keep out both cold and noise. Your bed is barely more comfortable than sleeping on the ground. The sounds of urban poverty surround you through the night. Babies cry because they're hungry, and their parents have no food to give them. Children whimper with illnesses that a doctor could cure, but doctors cost money that these families will never have. Adults argue about debts and work, and the constant struggle to survive in a city that seems designed to crush the poor. The noise never stops, because the problems never stop, and there is nowhere to go for quiet. The contrast with wealthy Romans grows sharper in the darkness. While you lie listening to arguments and crying babies and the threat of fire, rich families rest in spacious domus houses or villas built on quiet hills like the Palatine, far from the commercial districts. Their thick stone walls keep out the noise of carts and crowds. Their spacious rooms provide privacy for rest and thought. Their comfortable beds and fine blankets create conditions where sleep comes naturally and deeply. They wake refreshed while you wake exhausted, having barely slept at all. Your children lie pressed against you on the narrow mattress, their small bodies warm but restless. They have never known the deep, peaceful sleep of the countryside or the comfortable rest of wealthy homes. They were born into this world of constant noise and crowding, and they accept sleeplessness as normal. But you remember quieter nights from your childhood in smaller towns, and the loss of that peace weighs on you like a physical burden. The woman who lives below you works in the public baths, scrubbing floors and hauling water for 16 hours each day. She climbs the 5 flights to her room each night with feet so swollen she can barely walk. But when she finally reaches her bed, the noise from the street and the neighbouring rooms prevents the rest her body desperately needs. She lies awake, listening to the same sounds you hear, carrying the same fears you carry, facing another day of exhausting work on another night of too little sleep. Sleep deprivation becomes a condition that defines the urban poor of Rome. You and thousands like you live in a state of constant tiredness that affects every aspect of your lives. You work more slowly because you're always tired. You get sick more often because your body never fully recovers from each day's stress. You age faster because rest never comes to restore your strength. For most Romans, a good night's sleep is as rare and precious as gold, something you dream about but rarely experience. The cycle repeats night after night, year after year, days of back-breaking work followed by nights of impossible sleep, exhaustion building upon exhaustion until it becomes a permanent condition rather than a temporary state. Your tired mind carries the accumulated weight of hundreds of sleepless nights, thousands of hours when rest was needed but never found. But even this urban nightmare of sleepless nights and endless noise would not last forever. The great city that seemed too large and loud ever to change was already beginning to transform in ways that would bring a different kind of restless darkness. By the late 300s AD, you walk through streets that once bustled with life, now eerily quiet and half empty. The narrow pathways between buildings feel wider somehow, not because they have grown, but because so many people have simply disappeared. Your footsteps echo against stone walls in a way they never did during the crowded chaos of imperial Rome. The sound bounces back at you, hollow and strange, as if the city itself has become too large for the people who remain. Empty shops line the streets where merchants once shouted their wares from dawn until dusk. Their wooden shutters hang crooked on broken hinges, creaking softly in the evening breeze. You pass doorways that once led to busy workshops filled with the sounds of hammers and voices. Now they open onto darkness and silence. The smell of abandonment drifts from these vacant spaces, not the sharp scent of recent departure, but the musty odour of places where no one has lived or worked for months or years. The complex supply systems that once sustained Rome's massive population have begun to break down as the Western Empire contracts. Ships arrive less frequently at the harbour, carrying smaller loads from provinces that seem less eager or able to trade with Rome. The endless stream of goods from distant lands has slowed to a trickle. You spend your days in markets that feel too large for the few customers who still come to buy. The vast spaces that once overflowed with people and merchandise now echo with the conversations of the handful who remain. Many of your neighbours have joined the migration, away from cities back to the countryside, as the imperial economy falters. They speak of finding work on farms, of returning to the simpler life their grandparents knew before Rome grew so large and demanding. The insulae that once housed hundreds of families now shelter only dozens. You climb stairs past empty apartments, their doors sealed or simply left open to reveal bare rooms where entire families once struggled to sleep despite the noise and crowding. The forum that once rang with the voices of thousands now holds only scattered groups of people who speak in hushed tones. Their conversations carry differently in the emptier space. You can hear individual words and phrases that would have been lost in the old crowds. They talk about friends who have moved away, about businesses that have closed, about the uncertain future that seems to grow more uncertain with each passing season. The worry in their voices mixes with the hollow acoustics of the half-empty square. Evening brings a different kind of quiet than Rome has ever known. Not the peaceful silence of the countryside, where night's sounds belong to the natural world, and not the forced quiet of wealthy neighbourhoods, where thick walls keep out unwanted noise. This is the heavy silence of loss, the quiet that comes when something important has gone missing. The air itself feels different, less dense somehow, as if the breath of all those departed people once gave the city a weight it no longer carries. The supply carts that once thundered through the night have grown fewer and quieter. When they do pass below your window, their wheels seem to echo longer in streets where fewer people live to absorb the sound. The drivers call less frequently to each other, and their voices carry a different tone, not the confident shouts of men who knew their goods were desperately needed, but the uncertain calls of people who wonder if their cargo will find buyers in this shrinking market. Your neighbours who remain carry the weight of watching their world grow smaller. The old woman who lives across the hall remembers when every room in the building was full, when children played in the narrow corridors, when the sounds of daily life created a constant hum of human activity. Now she moves through spaces that feel too large and too quiet for the few people who still call them home. Her footsteps sound lonely in the empty hallways. The psychological burden of living in a civilization that is visibly fading affects how you experience each day and night. You wake each morning wondering which shops will still be open, which neighbours will still be there when you return home. The uncertainty creeps into every decision, every plan, every hope for the future. Nothing feels permanent anymore. The great city that once seemed eternal now feels fragile, as if it might disappear entirely if too many more people decide to leave. Sleep comes differently in this quieter Rome. Your tired body still craves rest after the day's work, but your mind struggles with the strange new silence that surrounds you. The absence of familiar sounds creates its own form of restlessness. You find yourself listening for noises that no longer come, waiting for the comfort of human activity that used to make sleep difficult, but at least confirms that life continued around you. The darkness feels heavier when it settles over half-empty streets, not the comfortable darkness of the countryside, where night brings natural peace, but the oppressive darkness of a place that has lost much of its purpose and energy. You lie in bed listening to the wind move through abandoned buildings, creating sounds that seem almost like voices but carry no human warmth or meaning. Anxiety fills the spaces where chaos once ruled. The worry about Rome's future becomes as constant as the old fears of fire and sleeplessness. But this new fear has no clear solution. You cannot escape it by moving to a safer building or finding quieter streets. The uncertainty follows you everywhere because it lives in the very air of the contracting city, in the empty buildings and closed shops and missing faces of friends who have gone away. Sometimes the absence of noise feels more unsettling than the overwhelming chaos ever did. At least a crowded, noisy Rome felt alive and vital, even if it was exhausting and dangerous. This quieter version feels like a city holding its breath, waiting for something that might never come, slowly fading into a shadow of what it once was. You close your eyes against the weight of this uncertain silence, your mind searching for something to anchor itself to in the darkness. The city around you seems to wait in the same restless quiet, as if everyone lies awake, wondering what tomorrow might bring to this fading world. A clear bronze tone rings across the sleeping city, cutting through the heavy silence, like a blade of light piercing thick cloth. You lift your head from your thin pillow, listening as the bell's voice carries across rooftops and through narrow alleys, where worry has made the quiet feel oppressive. This is not the harsh clang of alarm or the chaotic noise of commerce, but something entirely new, a purposeful sound that seems to organize the darkness around a rhythm you have never heard before. Several centuries have passed since the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and Christianity has become the dominant religion throughout what remains of the eternal city. The bell rings from the monastery that has grown up in what used to be a wealthy Roman's villa. Where once private gardens bloomed behind high walls, monks now tend simple vegetables and pray at the structured hours that divide both day and night into meaningful portions. Their bronze bell hangs in a tower built from stones taken from abandoned temples, and its voice reaches across the contracted city with a clarity that makes the emptiness feel less lonely. You count the strikes, 7 slow, measured tones that mark the hour for evening prayer. The monastic communities follow a careful schedule of prayer times throughout the day and night, each one announced by the bronze voice that has become the heartbeat of this transformed Rome. The sound fades gradually, absorbed by the stone buildings and wooden structures that still house the Romans who remain. But even as the last echo disappears, you feel something different in the air around you. The silence that returns is no longer the heavy quiet of abandonment and worry. It has been transformed into something that feels more like waiting, patient, expectant, peaceful. The contrast between this purposeful sound and the chaotic noise that once filled Roman nights could not be sharper. Gone are the thunderous supply carts that shook buildings with their iron wheels. Gone are the shouting drivers and clanging tools of nighttime commerce. Gone too is the oppressive quiet that came when the great city began to shrink, leaving behind only the whispered conversations of people uncertain about their future. In place of all these sounds, the bell creates something entirely new, a rhythm that gives structure to the darkness. Hours pass and the bell rings again, this time only 3 tones, marking another prayer time that organizes the night according to spiritual rather than commercial needs. You lie in your bed, listening to the clear, bronze voice that seems to speak directly to something deep inside you. The monks who ring this bell are awake when the rest of the city sleeps, keeping watch through the darkest hours, maintaining a connection to something larger and more permanent than the rise and fall of earthly power. These regular chimes begin to replace the old fears that made Roman nights so difficult to endure. Where once you listened anxiously for the sound of approaching fire or the rumble of heavy carts. Now you find yourself waiting for the comforting voice of the bell that tells you someone is awake, someone is watching, someone is maintaining order through the lonely hours of darkness. The bronze tones become as reliable as sunrise, marking time with sounds that carry hope rather than threat. The bell creates a sense of community that connects everyone who hears its voice. In buildings scattered across the contracted city, Romans like you lift your heads at the sound of each hourly chime. You share this moment with the old woman who lives alone in the room below yours, with the baker who must rise before dawn to prepare bread for the smaller markets, with a handful of families who still call this neighbourhood home. The bell's voice reaches all of you at the same moment, binding you together in shared time. Your sleep begins to change as this new rhythm establishes itself in your mind and body. Where once the night felt like a battleground between the need for rest and the impossibility of finding quiet, now it becomes divided into manageable portions marked by the gentle bronze voice. You sleep for a few hours, wake to the bell's midnight call, then drift back into slumber, knowing that another chime will mark the passing of time until dawn arrives with its own bell announcing morning prayers. The psychological comfort that comes from knowing someone maintains watch through the night cannot be measured in simple terms. The monks in their stone monastery represent something that neither fire nor economic collapse nor political uncertainty can destroy. Their prayers continue regardless of whether Rome thrives or struggles. Their bells ring whether the city is crowded or empty. This constancy provides an anchor in a world that has seen too much change too quickly. The bell transforms night from a time of vigilance against danger into something approaching spiritual peace. The bronze tones seem to absorb and transform all the anxiety that has built up during the day's uncertainties. When you hear the evening chimes, your body begins to relax in ways it could not when night brought only the threat of fire or the thunder of commerce. The sound creates a bubble of sacred time, where rest becomes possible again. Even the empty buildings that once made the city feel haunted now seem less threatening when the bell's voice fills the spaces between them. The vacant shops and abandoned apartments no longer represent only loss and decline. They become part of a larger quiet that allows the bronze tones to carry further and reach more people with their message of continuity and hope. The emptiness that once felt oppressive now creates the perfect acoustic space for this new form of urban music. Children who have known only the anxiety of Rome's decline begin to sleep more peacefully when the bells mark their nights with regular rhythm. Their parents no longer lie awake listening for dangers that might approach through the darkness. Instead, they rest between the bronze chimes that divide the night into prayer-sized portions, each one marked by the knowledge that someone keeps watch while they sleep. The bells turn night from a time of fear into a time of spiritual peace that Rome has not known since the simple days of the countryside republic. The bronze voices speak of permanence in a world that has seen too much change, of order in a place touched by chaos, of hope in a city that had begun to doubt its own future. They create the first truly restful nights Romans have experienced since the great urban experiment began centuries ago. As you drift towards sleep between the gentle chimes, you sense that this sacred rhythm has prepared the city for something new. The bells have taught Rome that night sounds need not bring fear or chaos. that darkness can hold beauty as well as rest. This lesson will echo through the centuries ahead, inspiring new ways to fill the night with sounds that soothe rather than disturb. Water flows through Renaissance Rome with a gentle, constant whisper that transforms the night. After centuries of harsh wheels on stone, screaming crowds, thunderous supply carts, and the heavy silence of decline, this liquid voice brings something Rome has not experienced in over 1,000 years. The sound drifts through your window as evening settles over the city, soft and continuous, like a lullaby that never ends. Water cascades from carved marble figures, spills over stone basins, and flows through channels designed not just to move liquid from place to place, but to create music that soothes the urban night. Your day in Renaissance Rome has been filled with the sounds of renewal. Hammers ring against stone as workers shape new buildings. From the ruins of the old chisels click steadily as sculptors carve faces and figures that will decorate the growing fountains. Voices call instructions as teams of men guide massive blocks of marble through streets that once echoed with abandonment. The city rebuilds itself around you with major urban planning initiatives that represent something entirely new. Attention to beauty as well as function. Care for how people live as well as what they need. The great fountain that rises near your neighbourhood has taken months to complete. You watched workers dig deep foundations, install the pipes that would carry water from distant springs, and position the carved figures that would direct the flow into patterns pleasing to both eye and ear. Master craftsmen planned every detail to ensure the water would fall just so, creating sounds that mask the less pleasant noises of urban life without overwhelming the senses with volume or harshness. This fountain represents a conscious effort to make urban life more pleasant and beautiful, not just functional, a significant shift in how cities think about serving their people. As darkness deepens and the fountain continues its liquid song, you notice how different this night feels from all the Roman nights that came before. The harsh clatter of iron wheels on cobblestone is softened by the steady whisper of falling water. The shouts of late workers blend into the fountain's voice until they become part of a larger symphony rather than separate assaults on tired ears. Even the footsteps of people walking past your building seem gentler when heard through the constant, soothing backdrop of flowing water. The fountain creates the first pleasant background noise the Romans have heard in centuries. Where once the night brought only threatening sounds, fire crackling, carts thundering, voices raised in fear or anger, now it offers a steady, peaceful presence that makes sleep possible again. The water sound acts like a soft blanket thrown over the sharper edges of urban life, not eliminating them, but wrapping them in something that feels safe and comforting. Your body responds to this new soundscape in ways you had not expected. Muscles that usually remain tense through the night, listening for danger or disturbance, begin to relax as the fountain's voice assures you that all is well. Your breathing slows to match the steady rhythm of water meeting stone. Your mind, accustomed to the vigilance that kept you alert through centuries of Roman nights, allows itself to drift toward rest, as the gentle sound creates a sense of security and peace. The sensory pleasure of the fountain extends beyond simple sound. The moisture it adds to the air carries the clean scent of fresh water, replacing the dust and smoke that usually fill your nostrils. The coolness that radiates from the flowing streams touches your skin through the window, offering relief from the day's heat that stone buildings trap and hold long into the night. The sound itself has texture, not the flat crash of wheels or the sharp edge of metal on stone, but the layered complexity of water finding different surfaces and creating different notes. This white noise helps you sleep better than you have since the peaceful nights of the early Republic, before Rome grew large and loud and dangerous. The fountain's voice follows you into dreams, creating a soundtrack for rest that feels both natural and civilized. Your sleep grows deeper and more restorative because your mind no longer needs to sort through threatening sounds, deciding which require attention and which can be safely ignored. The water speaks of nothing but peace and continuity, allowing your tired consciousness to let go completely. Families throughout the neighborhood share this experience of better rest. Children fall asleep more easily when the fountain's lullaby drifts through their windows. Parents sleep more soundly, knowing their little ones are peaceful and safe. The elderly, whose lighter sleep made them vulnerable to every disturbance, find that the steady water sound masks the smaller noises that once woke them repeatedly. Through the night, even the sick rest better when their fevered minds can focus on the fountain's gentle rhythm instead of the harsh reminders of urban struggle. The fountain gives Romans their first truly restful nights in over 1,000 years. Not since the countryside republic, when tired farmers earned their sleep through honest work and found it in natural quiet, have Romans slept so peacefully. The water sound creates an artificial version of natural peace, not the silence of empty fields, but a civilized substitute that works within the urban environment rather than fighting against it. Other fountains throughout the growing city add their voices to this new nighttime chorus. Projects like these would eventually include masterpieces like the Trevi Fountain, becoming characteristic features of Rome during this period of artistic and architectural renewal. Each fountain creates its own variation on the theme of falling water, but all work together to transform Rome's soundscape from something that prevents rest into something that encourages it. The city's leaders have learned to manage urban sound rather than simply enduring it, creating conditions where beauty and function support each other in serving human needs. As you settle deeper into sleep, lulled by the fountain's endless song, you carry with you the satisfaction of living in a place that cares about how its people rest, as well as how they work. The water will flow all night, creating the same peaceful sounds for anyone who needs them, offering the gift of restorative sleep to a city that had almost forgotten what true rest could feel like. Yet even as these fountains mark a new chapter in Rome's long story, the eternal city continues to change. New sounds will soon join the water's gentle voice, bringing their own rhythms to the ancient streets. The distinctive puttering hum of Vespa engines fades as evening settles over Rome in the 1950s. The small motorcycles that carried Romans through their busy day now rest in narrow alleys and beside apartment buildings, their metal bodies cooling in the twilight air. This sound, that familiar two-stroke buzz, becomes part of the evening quiet, replaced by the softer sounds of a city winding down from another day of post-war reconstruction and renewal. Your day in this rebuilding of Rome began with the electric hum that now fills the background of modern life. Street lights flickered on, with the flip of switches instead of the careful lighting of oil lamps. Electric trams carried you through streets where once only feet and hooves travelled. The radio in your small apartment brought voices and music from across the world, sounds that would have seemed like magic to the Romans who came before you. But beneath all these new sounds, the rhythm of your day followed patterns that would feel familiar to Romans from any era. You worked with your hands, just as Romans always have. Perhaps you shaped clay in a pottery workshop, your fingers learning the same motions that Roman potters mastered 2,000 years ago. Perhaps you built furniture from wood, your tools creating shavings that curled and fell just as they did for Roman craftsmen who made chairs and tables for their families. Perhaps you cooked in a small restaurant, stirring pots over flames that heated food in ways Romans would recognize, even as the stoves themselves would seem foreign and wonderful. The exhaustion that settled into your muscles as the day progressed carries the same honest weight that tired Romans throughout history. Your back aches from bending over your work. Your hands are rough from handling tools and materials. Your feet hurt from standing through long hours of focused effort. The tiredness in your body tells the story of a day spent in meaningful work, just as it did for the farmer in the early Republic, who ploughed his small field, just as it did for the poor labourer in imperial Rome, who hauled grain through crowded markets. This period represents Rome adapting ancient urban patterns to modern technology and transportation, maintaining continuity with the past while embracing change. Electric lights now illuminate the streets, where once only moonlight and occasional torches guided through the darkness. But the lights create their own gentle hum, a steady electrical whisper that joins the fountain sounds and the distant rumble of automobiles to form Rome's newest nighttime chorus. The harsh chaos of supply carts has been replaced by the softer sounds of delivery trucks that move goods through wider streets. With rubber tyres instead of iron wheels, your small apartment has running water that flows when you turn a handle, electricity that brings light at the touch of a switch, and heat that comes from radiators instead of wood fires. These modern conveniences would astound Romans from earlier eras, but they serve the same human needs that Romans always carried into their nights. You wash your face and hands before sleep, just as Romans did with water from wells and basins. You check that your door is secure, just as Romans barred their entrances against the dangers of darkness. You prepare your bed for rest, just as tired Romans have done for 27 centuries. The sounds outside your window tell the story of a city that has learned to manage the noise that once made sleep impossible. Automobiles move on paved roads that absorb sound better than ancient cobblestones. Buildings are constructed with materials that block noise rather than amplifying it. The fountain tradition continues, with water features throughout the city providing the same soothing white noise that helped Renaissance Romans sleep peacefully for the first time in centuries. You settle into bed with the same gratitude that Romans in 500 BC felt after a day of honest work in their fields. The technology around you has changed completely, but the human experience of earning rest through effort remains constant. Your tired body sinks into a mattress that would seem impossibly luxurious to Romans who slept on straw, but the relief you feel is identical to theirs. The satisfaction of having completed another day of meaningful work, the pleasure of muscles finally relaxing, the quiet anticipation of restorative sleep. These experiences connect you directly to every Roman who ever lived. The electric hum of your refrigerator joins the distant sound of a fountain and the occasional whisper of automobile tyres on pavement to create a gentle soundscape that encourages rest. These are not the threatening noises that kept imperial Romans awake in fear, not the heavy silence that worried Romans during the city's decline, not even the purposeful bells that comforted medieval Romans with their spiritual rhythm. These are the sounds of a city that has learned to balance human needs with urban function, creating conditions where sleep comes naturally after the day's efforts. Your breathing deepens as sleep approaches, just as it did for Romans throughout history when their tired bodies finally found the rest they had earned. The continuity of this experience, work leading to tiredness, tiredness leading to the need for sleep, sleep restoring strength for another day of work, has remained constant through every era of Roman history. The sounds have changed from crickets in countryside fields to the hum of electric lights, but the human rhythm of day and night continues unchanged. Modern Romans fall asleep as gratefully as their ancestors did 25 centuries ago. The exhaustion may come from different kinds of work. The beds may be softer, the sounds may be gentler, but the fundamental human experience of bringing the day's efforts and emotions into the night remains exactly the same. You carry with you the satisfaction of work completed, the tiredness that comes from using your body and mind purposefully, and the quiet contentment that comes from another day lived well in the eternal city. Technology has transformed the sounds and sights of Roman nights, but it has not changed the deeper truth that connects all these different eras. Through every transformation, through every rise and fall, through every new sound that has joined the chorus of Roman darkness, one constant thread has woven its way through 27 centuries of nights in the eternal city. That constant thread is the human experience of earning rest through meaningful effort. Across these 2,700 years, from the early Republic around 500 BC to the modern era of the 1950s, one truth echoes through every Roman night. Whether you collapsed onto straw after ploughing fields or settled into a modern bed after another day rebuilding the eternal city, the same rhythm guided you toward rest. Your tired body carried the weight of work that mattered. Your mind held the memories and emotions that shaped each day. Your need for sleep came not just from physical exhaustion, but from the deep satisfaction of having lived through another day with purpose. The farmer who woke before sunrise to tend his goats brought different tiredness to his simple bed than the urban labourer who fought through imperial Rome's chaotic crowds, but both men carried their days into their nights. The farmer's muscles ached from honest work with soil and stone. His mind held the quiet satisfaction of tasks completed and animals cared for. The labourer's body hurt from different struggles, from pushing through endless crowds, from breathing dust and smoke, from surviving the sensory assault of 1 million people living too close together. Yet both carried into sleep the weight of work that fed families and built something lasting. You felt this same connection whether you lived through Rome's decline or renewal. The Roman who watched his city shrink brought anxiety to bed, but also the resilience that comes from witnessing history and choosing to remain the medieval Roman who heard monastery bells carried spiritual comfort into sleep, knowing someone kept watch through the darkest hours. The Renaissance Roman who fell asleep to fountain sounds experienced the peace that comes when beauty and function work together to serve human needs. Each era brought different sounds, different fears, different comforts, but the fundamental experience remained unchanged. Night has always been shaped by the day that came before it. The farmer's peaceful sleep reflected the honest rhythm of agricultural work. The urban poor's restless nights mirrored the chaos and danger of crowded city life. The worried quiet of Rome's decline echoed the anxiety that filled the shortened days. The structured rest of medieval nights matched the ordered rhythm of prayer and community. The beautiful sleep of Renaissance. Romans reflected days spent creating and renewing rather than just surviving. The comfortable rest of modern Romans followed days of work that balanced tradition with progress. Your sleep quality always depended on how your day unfolded. When work felt meaningful, when relationships provided comfort, when the day's efforts produced visible results, sleep came naturally and deeply. When days brought only struggle without purpose, when fear dominated hope, when exhaustion came from fighting rather than building, rest remained elusive, even when the body desperately needed it. This pattern held true whether you scattered grain for chickens at dawn or caught the evening tram home from a modern workshop. We see this connection in every era of Roman history. The early republic's farmers slept deeply because their work connected them to something larger: the land, the seasons, the rhythm of growth and harvest. Imperial Rome's poor slept fitfully because their days brought only survival without meaning, struggle without satisfaction. Medieval Romans found rest through a spiritual connection that gave purpose to their contracted world. Renaissance Romans slept peacefully because their days were filled with beauty that served the whole community. Modern Romans rest well when their work contributes to something beyond immediate survival. Understanding historical nights helps us understand our own need for rest. When you struggle to sleep after a day that felt empty or meaningless, you share something with every Roman who ever lived. When work feels good in your hands and sleep comes easily, you experience what the early Republic farmer knew intimately. When noise and chaos make rest impossible, you understand the exhaustion that plagued Imperial Rome's urban poor. When anxiety about the future makes quiet feel heavy rather than peaceful, you connect with Romans who watched their great city shrink. The sounds that filled Roman nights tell the story of human needs and how societies try to meet them. The countryside's quiet served people whose work connected them to natural rhythms. Urban chaos reflected the attempt to house and feed unprecedented numbers of people in small spaces. The silence of decline spoke to loss and uncertainty about what comes next. Monastery bells provided structure and hope when earthly institutions failed. Fountain songs offered the first successful attempt to make urban life beautiful as well as functional. Electric hums represent the ongoing effort to balance human needs with technological possibilities. Your own need for rest connects you directly to this long chain of Roman nights. The tiredness you feel after a day of good work echoes in every satisfied farmer who's ever fallen asleep in the countryside republic. The frustration you experience when noise prevents sleep links you to every urban Roman who struggled with the chaos of crowded city life. The comfort you find in gentle sounds that help you rest connects you to every Roman who discovered that beauty and function can work together to serve human needs. Whether you earned your tiredness through farming or craftsmanship, whether your day brought satisfaction or struggle, whether tonight finds you in countryside quiet or gentle urban sounds, you carry forward the same human experience that shaped every Roman night, for 27 centuries. The need for meaningful work, the desire for healing rest, the hope that tomorrow will bring another day worth living. These remain constant no matter how much the world changes around them. This unbroken chain of human experience reaches forward from ancient Rome into your own life, connecting you to everyone who has ever worked through the day and sought peace in the darkness. As you prepare for sleep tonight, you join this ancient rhythm that has guided Romans through 27 centuries of nights. Your tired muscles carry the same honest weight that farmers felt after ploughing countryside fields, that labourers knew after surviving imperial Rome's chaos, that craftsmen experienced after rebuilding their city from ruins. Your need for quiet echoes through every Roman night, from peaceful countryside silence to the gentle whisper of Renaissance fountains to the soft, electrical hum of modern streets. Whether your day brought ancient challenges or contemporary work, the gift remains unchanged. Peaceful rest earned through effort that matters. Sleep well, knowing you share this timeless rhythm with every Roman who ever closed their eyes after a day of meaningful work. Thank you for drifting through the night with me. If you found comfort here, tap subscribe and like the video. It helps others find a warm place to rest too.